Get that.
All right. We're live.
We're live. Okay, got it. All right. I want to say good evening to everyone. Thank God for you. Thank God for the opportunity to come before you on this Sunday evening. Matter of fact, this beautiful Sunday evening here in Rochester, Minnesota. And God has truly blessed us today. And we've had a great day. Had a chance to fellowship today at Fellowship. Had a chance to preach there, and I had a wonderful time this morning. Working with Brother Billy Steele and his choir over there. They just did an outstanding job, and so had a good time over there this morning. So the Lord allowed us to preach. So thank God for that. I'm going to start before I leave with a word of prayer by reading some scriptures, or a couple of scriptures from Bishop Labaron Hedgemon's book. It's actually in chapter 1. They talked about my case study of my journey, and it's 3 John chapter 2. Well, John 2, 3rd. A minute. Yeah. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. Dear friends, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along. Those were some scriptures that caught my attention right when I first was reading the book, and as I was reading, it kind of just jumped out at me, and the way he started it off, and certainly it set the pace, or set the tone for the entire book that we're going to talk about later on. But just before we get to that, let us open up with a word of prayer. God, we thank you for everything that thou hast done, everything that you are doing, everything we know you're going to do. We ask that you would bless us this evening on this gathering, like you have so many times before. Continue to lead us and guide us in ways that will be pleasing in your sight. But God, we know we are nothing without you. And therefore, we ask that you would take control right now, and you direct our path, even in the questions and the answers that come forward. Help us to say something that will be pleasing in your sight, and that will help somebody along the way. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. So again, thank you. As I said, we had a chance to preach at Fellowship today, and I want to take time to thank everybody for that helped to make that a great success today. But also on last week, we had a chance to preach our farewell sermon for the State Baptist Convention on Thursday night, and this past Thursday night. And I want to thank everybody who made that whole week a successful week. State Baptist Convention. I guess the attendance was better than expected, because we are still in the midst of a COVID-19 situation with the Delta variant running rampant. State fair started on Thursday night as well, but God blessed us the entire week, and thank you all. You all showed up. Those that showed up and was witnesses with us, and you blessed us on Thursday night. I thank you for everything that you were able to do on Thursday night, and giving us a great send-off, but also a new beginning, a great beginning for Pastor Ronnie Patterson and the State Baptist Convention going forward. And we'll talk about that some next week. He's going to set this thing off with a big gala starting, in October 29th. And certainly we're going to try to help as much as we can to make that be a success, that we can give him a successful push. We didn't have any lack. There was no transition of power problems. I was happy to turn it over to him, and happy to see it, the convention in the state where it is right now. And it is a success, and it's going to continue to be a success. So we are so thankful that the convention is up and didn't miss a beat. The new financial people in place, and new president in place, new cabinets in place. Convention didn't miss a beat. So again, thank you all. And some great stuff have happened this year. In 2021, I have been able to finish my term as the Minnesota Council of Churches president. That happened as of January. I was done. And then as the pastor of Greater Friendship, I retired in April. And retired right now. And then last week, my 8 year was up in the State Baptist Convention, which was highlighted by hosting the National Baptist Convention back in 2018. So certainly it's been a good journey. So thank you all for everything that you've done. And now people ask the question, what are you gonna do now? If you had all these things going on, all these meetings, all these presidents, you would think you were president over. What are you gonna do now? Where are you going? Where are you gonna live? What are you gonna do? I get that. I'm bombarded with those questions. And all I can say is, whatever God say to do, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm not trying to hurry God. I'm not trying to rush God. I'm not even acting like I'm patient. I'm not in any kind of desperation. God has always made a way. He has always came through. I've never doubted him, and I certainly don't doubt him now. I know I'm following his voice, his direction. When it was time to retire, it was time to retire. It was time for new directions. And now it's even time for new direction even in my life. So I'm waiting on whatever God says. That's what I'm going to do. Whether it's here or across the world, I don't know. But one thing I do know, we're going to continue to build Pearls of Living Ministry. And that can be done in Minnesota or in New York, wherever. But the bottom line is we're going to continue to build Pearls of Living Ministry. And we're doing this series now. It's really our Better Together series called Pearls of Wisdom. And we've been doing a lot with relationships. And we wanted to send a lot around relationships because my true goal is to be able to help younger pastors be successful in their ministry. I think God has given us enough experience to actually fulfill the scriptures when it says that old men are for counsel, young men are for war. And I think I'm in a position that I can be of a counsel in various situations, having put in the academic work as well as the experience on the front lines. And I think God has prepared me to be able to help the next generation go forward. But I think we have to kind of move out the way sometimes, let the next generation take off before they look around and they be just as old as me. So I think it's time now for that next generation to start up and start writing, start working, and don't wait until you get to be 65 years old before you start working. So now that's the reason why I want to kind of move aside and let new ideas, fresh ideas come in, and I just want to be able to shape those goals and those values and help various ministries. And we've been in contact with a lot of people, and we're considering a lot of things. But my main goal is to be able to help younger ministers, young ministries, whether it be startup churches or whether it be helping churches to plant or even replant. God is gonna give those directions, and I'm just gonna say yes, Lord, to your will, yes to your way. So that's where it is. I'm not in a hurry because you can't hurry God. So you just gotta wait. So that's what I'm doing. So thank you all for all the questions concerning the next steps. But that is Pearls of Wisdom. The Pearls of Wisdom series is my ministry right now on the Pearls of Living. So that's where we are. We're reaching out to different people that the Lord has enabled us to know over the years who are doing an outstanding job. And we talked about relationships. We've done a lot with relationships because my wife and I has celebrated our 44th year anniversary, and we moved into our 45th year anniversary celebration. And we are planning a big thing for 45. Because I remember and this was a part of Pearls of Living. My mom, when she and my dad got 45 years in, my mom wanted to go ahead and have her celebration because she didn't know if they were going to live to see 50 years or not. So she said to my dad, I want to have our big celebration at 45 years of marriage rather than waiting until we get 50 years in because we don't know what will happen. And that was very prophetic, saying that they had that big 45th year celebration, and Dad did pass away before they got to 50 years. And so I'm happy they were able to have that during their 45th year. So I'm not saying we're going to do anything like Mom and Dad did for 45, but my wife and I, we are planning something really good, really special for couples. The pandemic will have a lot to do with it, but but we're planning something to really try to help couples as we celebrate our time together. So with that in mind, that's what brought us to this point where we are tonight. We have a very special guest with us, one who I watched grow up over the years. I believe this young man was a 7th grader when I first met him. When I first came to be pastor at Mount Olive Baptist Church, I was still serving as principal in Marion County, the Marion County schools, and I was transferring back and forth from Columbia, Mississippi to Meridian, from Columbia, Mississippi to Meridian. That's what I was doing, going back and forth to pastor the church at Mount Olive. And I met Labaron, Labaron and Billy. And it was a prayer group that Labaron, that you and Miss Eartha, your mother, headed up, and Miss Norwood, I can't remember her first name.
Alicia.
They was guiding you all. Yeah. And as a 7th grader, boy, I remember y'all being so serious and holding hands and praying and joining and praying for me and praying for my travel down the road and praying for my leadership. Yeah. I like, these some serious young people here. But I remember that group. And wow. That stayed in my mind. And so as you join us this evening, let me just say, he really need no introduction. We're going to talk a little bit more about it in just a minute, but that's going to be the foundation of our discussion tonight. We're going to talk about how that prayer group, I feel like in my heart, how it had a significant impact on your life at a very young age. But we have Labaron Hedgemon, Bishop Labaron Hedgemon. He has been to Greater Friendship several times and preached for us at Greater Friendship. But he was bishop-elect at that time, but now he's the real deal. He's Bishop Labaron Hedgemon. We had a chance, Chavez and I had a chance to go down and be a part of that service. And it was an amazing experience to see how everything happened. And now we can say that we do know a young man that came up in our ministry who is a bishop. So we're certainly thankful for Labaron Hedgemon. As I said, one that I've known. He's a great pastor down in Meridian, Mississippi. So that's who we have with us. So Labaron, if you can just kind of, let's start at that point where we first came to meet in Meridian. I was a young pastor then. I might have been what, 30 something. I was young pastor, and you were a young Labaron, young 7th grade Labaron. So let's talk about that journey. Let's start right there.
Man, I tell you, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a part of what you're doing at this state and on this level of your life. You have such a refreshing model to us. You're showing my generation how to do it. And I want to, first of all, give honor to you. You know, I love you. I stand on your shoulders. And that began when I was 13 years old. You was still carrying out the responsibilities of a principal at East Marion and driving to Meridian on Wednesdays for Bible study. And then obviously, for Sunday morning worship. And we had this prayer group. And, we was just learning about faith and agreement and things like that. And we had been through a wilderness before you got there. We went through, I think, over a year, maybe 14 months with no pastor, with just interims filling in. And when I tell you a wilderness, it was a dry period of time. And then God sent you. And I still remember the day sitting there, like on the second row when they was doing the count. I still remember all the guys who was in that voting process. Cleveland Hayes, a guy named Hendricks, and it was Billy Russell. And after they finished calculating the votes, Billy Russell was our pastor, which was a true answer, a spark of inspiration in my generation, because, we didn't have a pastor that came in wearing Nike gear and playing basketball with us when we have youth meetings on Saturdays and, sit around and eat a donut and talk sports, and yet and still be able to break down salvation and righteousness in a way where we could walk it out as teenagers. So it goes without saying that, our relationship began then. I was 13 quarterbacking at K. Griffin. And I never forget the day I looked up, you told me you were gonna come watch me play. And there you were, there in the stands. And we won that game that day. And I just thank you for being such a influence and being so instrumental in my life.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because I almost call you LeBron James. I mean, actually, when I was prepared, I said, so I got to ask LeBron this question. I said, no, it's Labaron. Because, you know, I remember not only the football, but the basketball, man. Yeah, that was something. And your skills, I mean, just a all-around athlete. So, and that was a major part of your growing up as well. Can you talk about that some?
Yes, I mean, basketball.
The kind of impact you had on the school, I mean, just by being in sports.
Yes, basketball was definitely my first love, and eventually the only sport I focused on. I was able to represent the state of Mississippi in a national tournament called Junior Nationals and played before coaches from Georgetown, Seton Hall, Duke University, and made third team All-American there. My senior year, I had a hairline knee fracture injury against Jackson Murray in Jackson that caused me to miss a critical run in our district play that had somewhat of an influence on my recruiting process. And so, but as a athlete who was a bold Christian in that I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't perfect now. I was the same teenage boy like everybody else, but I wasn't ashamed of my salvation. And I was president of Christian Fellowship of Christian Athletes, led the prayer around the pole. And so all of those would often be called upon to pray at school when tragic things happen. And it really encouraged me. Sports gave me a platform to be able to influence other teenagers on how to not be ashamed of their salvation, to the degree to where we had a youth choir there where your wife was instrumental in pulling us together and letting us utilize our gifts. And we were all in a tenor section, Chavez, myself, all of us. And God later on began to call me to preach, started from leading songs and testifying to actually preaching as a 11th grader there, where you licensed me to preach the gospel. And so, yes, at a young age, I was inspired to influence others for Christ.
I'm glad you mentioned that as an athlete and the flagpole, because you actually asked me to come there several times and speak and pray. And it was such a joy to see that many students gathered around a flagpole praying. Yes. How you had pulled them together and had such a tremendous impact on the lives of those young people there in school until I remember on when you did your first sermon, after you and I had gone through a series of what we call
preparation
boot camp and got to prepared and ready to go. And then, but on that night, I mean, you didn't show any kind of doubt. You were ready to go. And when we walked out there and saw that church filled to capacity, I mean, that was the most amazing feeling that I've ever had, and seeing a young minister come out like that. I mean, that church was what seat about 1,200?
Yes.
Or more? It was at least that many there that night.
With chairs in the aisle. Yeah.
With chairs in the aisle. So that means it could have been more than 1,200. But that place was packed out. And it was amazing to see how many young people were there that night. So you'd had an impact on them in the school. And because they believed in what you was doing in the school, it showed up when you did your initial sermon. And that night, people will compare you to Reverend Chapman that night.
Oh, no. You had me ready, though. You had me ready.
But let's talk about that. How the journey you went through to get to that point, and how God prepared you, and how you know it was the calling of God on your life.
Yes, God began to deal with me in dreams as early as 14. I would find myself dreaming, seeing myself preaching, literally. And I think in the 7th grade at Carver, I was 12. I did a book report and asked the teacher, could we arrange the classroom like a church? And she still talks about that, my math teacher, Miss Georgia Sims. And so it's always just kind of, even if I tried to gravitate from it, I always just kind of fell back into that kind of vein. And, from singing in the choir again, youth prayer group, volunteering with Sunday school, vacation Bible school, y'all kept us busy. It just kind of emerged forward. And I remember telling you that, Pastor, I think God is calling me to preach. And I use the same methods you use with me to this day. And, you said, well, pray about it. I believe that there could be a call there, but right now you believe it. You said, when you come back to me, you'll know it. And I thank God that you allowed me to sit in some ministers' classes just to get the feel for some things to make sure this is what you really want to do. And God began to visit me, and he began to become more and more clear. And after I said, Pastor, I know this is what he's called me to do. You then began to help me understand the importance of, a preacher has to have a prayer life. And I'll never forget, you told me, you said, God will tell you more in private than he will public. You got to pray. You got to have a relationship with God. And that was probably the most influential, I think, moment in my pastoral and ministerial journey. And even today, people ask me, how do you come up with your series and your sermons and stuff? And I tell them it come out of my prayer life. I started that way. God gives me what to say, speaks to me. I go study it, and that's what I convey to his people. And so as I go through those ministers classes and things, and then you begin to ask me, what is it that God has laid on your heart? And, you say, you have a subject, you want to be focused, you don't want to be all over the place, you don't have to try to preach all over the Bible in one night. And as we looked at that and the thought that God had gave me and what God was saying to me, you did kind of settle the butterflies. And I never forget, when I came to church, he said, there's a lot of people out there. I don't want you to get nervous. He said, take your time if you're nervous while the choir is singing and stuff like that. Just process it. It was meant to be. Just let it happen. And still to this day, when I preach at places all over the country and sometimes out of the country, I just hear that same moment of inspiration and mentoring. It was meant to be. Just let it be. And you just kind of really encouraged me to know, when you're prepared, God can take over. Your job is to make sure you're prepared. And that's how it happened. And it's still happening today.
When you're prepared. I mean, that's the key thing. And that it begins with your prayer life. And that,
Yes.
and that's still what I say to people today. It hadn't that changed. I mean, that way of preparation. And I know you got a chance to sit in on some, I brought Harold Bryson.
Oh, yes.
There.
Exegetical preaching. Yes.
Yeah.
We was able to, I was exposed to Harold Bryson there in what you had pulled together a 3-day seminar for pastors who ever wanted to come. I mean, the exposure to that degree of homiletical genius, really, ingenuity to how to 3-point preaching. And from there, it was a great influence. I ended up at Mississippi College because of that. And it took Christian studies. I took Old Testament. I took biblical preaching and principles. 3 classes I think I took at Mississippi College under Harold Bryson. And one of the greatest honors I had sitting in that class was to know that my pastor and mentor, who birthed me into ministry, sat under Harold Bryson at New Orleans Theological Seminary. So it did everything for me to feel as though I was able to walk in those same shoes and be exposed to those same impartations and wisdom.
And you know what? And you mentioned Mississippi College. Chavez went to Mississippi College too.
We were there together. He was running the football. I was shooting the basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
God had you all on the same team all this time.
Yes, man. Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
That's really good. That's really special.
We need it forever. Yeah.
How did it come about that now you actually you're a pastor in probably one of the greatest churches in the Mississippi area at Freedom Rock. And how did they come about? I mean, how did you get to be pastor at a church that was started years ago? Over 20 years ago.
21. It started in 2000, so 21 years ago. I came from William Carey. I transferred from Mississippi College to William Carey to take a youth pastor job, and wanted to get some experience in ministry. I felt I was through playing basketball, and I had a great opportunity. So I transferred to Hattiesburg, went to William Carey, and eventually finished there. Finished at William Carey and was presented with an opportunity, also having a minor in business and finance, to come and become a loan officer for a bank here in Meridian. So I moved back to Meridian, where I was born and raised. When I left Meridian to go to college, At that time, you were still pastor at Mount Olive. At the time I was away, freedom was birthed. And you were very instrumental in giving birth to that move and that kingdom assignment that you're asking me about today. So I do want to make sure I mention that, of where freedom, the womb that freedom came forth from. Now, when I came back to Meridian, I was at Freedom, joined Freedom in 2002, and just served. Want to be in a place where I felt I had family there and history there and young family, and started there as a minister, already licensed, and that was acknowledged when I came. Serving in ministry, worked in media, worked with the men's ministry, whatever was needed, and then eventually was ordained an elder there. And the pastor who you appointed, Pastor Craig Tucker, pastored there for 10 years. And he came to me, said, I feel like my time is up. And I think you're the person that God wants to lead this ministry further. And, at that time, I'm traveling all over the place, preaching revivals and conferences, and I'm enjoying it. I'm like, I don't want to deal with church people on a regular basis. I want to be able to go in and preach and get out of here. But I kind of always felt that some kind of way that worked, that it was God's divine will that at some point I be instrumental in the leading of the ministry. Didn't know how, had applied for a church in Los Angeles. As I came out of evangelism, and then kind of people started calling for me. And then I had an opportunity to pastor in Ferguson, Missouri. And then I was like, then there was an opportunity to be a part of a church plant in Charlotte, North Carolina through the Southern Baptist. And I was like, I just didn't feel the move. I wasn't necessarily afraid to move, just didn't feel the move. And then a year later, we began to have those conversations. And then he asked me to be the pastor there. He met with some of the leadership. We had a church vote. I think everybody but 4 people voted, like a 98%. We started there. It was difficult times because we were just in a low place. And I think he assessed his time was up after he had kind of told people his time was up. Some of the people who were really just, I would say, really, really moved by him, not just the ministry. We have people that way. They had already decided they were going to leave. And so when I came in, things were really at a sloped place. But we started there in March of 2011. And I worked at the bank. I did not receive any salary from the church. At that time, we could not afford to pay me a salary at the church because I wanted the other people who already paid to not have to have a cut in pay. So I worked at the bank and pastored without a salary for several months until we got things up to where they needed to be, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and you talk about that in your book, by the way. I don't know if that's gonna come up. It'll come up back with a, yeah.
No, turn it around. There you go. That way.
Yeah. In your book. Funding your kingdom vision. You talked about how when you went into the church, you went into the church as pastor, not just looking forward to Sunday morning, but you was looking forward to, and you came up with your vision, and the vision mainly focus on community. And that's how you write this book, because you were able to see what churches needed to do more in the community. Can you talk about that some? How you?
Yes, the community piece has always been a passion of mine. And I think having a exposure to that through honestly Southern Baptist colleges, Mississippi College, William Carey University, a great emphasis is based on not just Christian education, but community involvement. So you couple that mindset with a day in which inner city, urban, or if you're looking on the outskirts, rural communities really have really benefited to the degree we had morning worship. It was just a Sunday morning worship emphasis. And so all of the emphasis was based on either the band, or you want to make sure your praise team is right. You want to make sure your drums and your lighting and your sound, and those things are very important, but they could not be the sum total of who we were going to be if we were going to grow beyond that state. And so one of the things that have always been my passion, again, I mentioned, I have been doing evangelism, preaching as an evangelist since I was 17. So doing seminars for finance and revivals and sitting on panels really opened my heart to have a strong community focus. And I wanted to make sure, Pastor Russell, that no matter where I pastored, if it was in Meridian or wherever, that we would not be a place that had a Sunday morning only focus. I've always had a desire to see cars on parking lots throughout the week, people moving on campus throughout the week. And so that in order to do that, there has to be a community focus, there has to be community initiatives, and there has to be programs, ministries that minister to the community. And one thing I read years ago that I never forgot, it said, if you really want to know if your church is kingdom oriented, look at how many ministries you have that have nothing to do with heaven or hell or salvation. What are you teaching people about financial literacy? Do you have something on nutrition and weight loss? Do you have things about addiction, things about parenting? All of those are community focused. Those are things that build the family and build the community. And that was my passion. And still to this day, our latest development is a community resource center where we just opened for people to be able to come and get perishable items, things that they need throughout the week for free, whether they less fortunate, homeless, or underserved. So, and I think those things really fuel the momentum of the church collectively.
We brought that bus. I brought a busload of preachers there from Minnesota.
I remember.
Black and white preachers. We went on a Sankofa trip, and we went by several churches, and the parking lot was empty. But then we came into Freedom parking lot. I mean, it was cars, people, movement going everywhere. And these people on the bus, the preachers, pastors on the bus, they were like, wow, what kind of ministers are going on here? Can you talk to us about what was going on that day and what they saw? I mean, this was real. And you didn't know we was coming. We just kind of eased up on you, and that's what was going on.
Yes, I still got the picture we took in the foyer that day before you got on the bus.
Okay.
Yes, that day we had our daycare and our pre-K learning academy, which starts with children as early as 6 weeks, and it prepares them for kindergarten. If their birthday is late, we do have some 5-year-olds whose birthday came after school started that year. And so we have at our academy, we have 61 students there. And it's always a waiting list for it. We have about 8 to 14 employees, 8 at least on campus at all times, could be 14 depending upon what's going on. So we had that going on in one facility. Then we have an after school program where we pick up at 18 different schools every day to bring those students to our campus, where we've hired certified teachers to give them extended classroom time. And so our after school program carries anywhere from now pandemic about 60, but in that day when you came before this, anywhere from 85 to 105 kids are there on campus every day for after school. And so we also have a large staff to service them. And then you have our office staff at the church who's also working operations and within office hours there. So all three of those dynamics were moving at one time on any given day.
And it's funny how you talked about that in your book, how you wanted to not only do the Sunday morning, but you wanted to be able to employ some people that's there at your church. And we saw evidence that day that not just 2 or 3 people, you got a full staff and you got all these teachers. Can you talk a little bit about your staff and the people you got working with you and your team, your CDC team?
Last year, I think we had 64 W-2s when it came tax time. We had to pass out to employees for their tax filing. So that kind of give you a glimpse of how large our staff gets. Summer camp is as well throughout the year. And that's our heart is, again, and in this book, we really challenge pastors, executive pastors, or, community outreach teams to not just think ministry, but industry. In this day and time, you won't be called to the table for just being a ministry. It is because you are both a ministry and industry. Industry not only supplies solutions to communities, rather again, rural or urban, but industries also employ. And I think one of the most beautiful things is to provide people opportunities to use their talent, gifts, and secular skill sets that they've earned in secular settings and be able to come and make them of use under a kingdom umbrella. It's a beautiful thing. And I believe that is a part of our end time purpose as churches going forward in this 21st century on forward.
Wonderful. And like I said, we saw that in action. And to see that you got people who are constantly there and you are doing things, people are busy. That is a true sign that the church is alive and active in the world today. And that's what it's going to take going forward.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Pastor, is definitely that is definitely what it's going to take. I also want to make sure I answer something you mentioned about the CDC team. Now, I don't think we would have had that with just a Sunday morning focus. I don't think our Sunday morning service component would have alone produced that. And so the CDC, when you heard Pastor Russell use that expression to those who are watching, he's referencing what we talk about in the book as a community development corporation, which is a partner of the church, but it's not the church. So the CDC coexists with the church. However, it carries on the focuses and responsibilities of the community. The CDC their focus is not getting people baptized. The CDC will cause you to touch people that would lead them to be baptized. But the CDC's focus is solely on providing solutions to communities and to citizens in your given area. And our CDC, excuse me, is what gave birth to the daycare, to the after school, and other things that we have in our future forthcoming. And so I understood that we need both in order to be an end time ministry that touches lives, that wins people to Christ. It requires more than Sunday morning. And what we do Monday through Friday or Saturday is really governed and driven by our Community Development Corporation.
This is all evident that I've seen it. You're not just making something up, because when I came to when you got ordained as a bishop, you had two mayors in your congregation that was there, the mayor of Marion and the mayor of Meridian.
Yes.
Matter of fact, even when I came to visit you on one occasion, me and you, the mayor, and our wives went out together.
That's exactly right.
So
that's exactly right.
And it took me back to this point when you were still in high school. We were together on a board called Leadership Lauderdale. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I remembered it.
But the mayor and all the community leaders,
all the decision makers,
decision makers were at the table. Mm-hmm. And I believe a lot of that was birthed in you, because you could hear what those decision makers were saying. They wanted the church to step forward and do. Mm-hmm. And what they were willing to help the church to do is we just make a step. Yes. But then at that time, everybody was scared to death to do anything because they were afraid of, you said something in your book about
federal phobias.
The federal phobias is what they had. Yes. And a lot of churches still today have that federal phobia when you can really be helped. But what you covered in that book and the way you covered it, I think that number one, if people read the book, it could help any pastor or any congregation begin to get beyond those federal phobias. Number two, at some point, we're going to, real soon, we're going to be bringing you up to do like a workshop setting for pastors and for churches to really show people how to put this piece together. Because if you can do it there in Meridian, Mississippi, it can be done anywhere. But
man, I was just about
do the right thing. Okay.
I was just about to say that, Pastor. I'm living in an area where the average income here is still in the 20s. I mean, the income per capita. So we're in a very underserved, impoverished area. Basically, sad to say, I believe by faith this is changing. But right now, if you're not in the education field or the medical field, then you're kind of just you're scraping to exist. So for us to be able to do that here really should be encouraging to people who are in other areas in where they have population, corporations, things of that sort in place. It is so much easier. And I want to say something. You talking about the boards you was on we was earlier, and one thing I admire, and I heard a statement once before that's worth repeating. There's more caught than taught. A lot of times we want people to stay on the phone and teach us, tell me everything you know, when you have to avail yourself to be an understudy and observe. Elisha observed Elisha. He was there with him asking for that mantle and driving you to revivals and seeing you in all of these settings. One of the things I saw was not only was there a gift to teach the word, preach the word, and sing, but there was a grace of influence, very influential. All of these doctors and all these people just gravitated to you. All of these boards with school districts and developments, the Riley Center, they was thinking about building that. They had you there, to come together with the largest, at that time, Caucasian church in the city, Northcrest, to do a joint service together. Influence. And I think one thing this book does, this book will awaken the influence that many ministries probably did not even know was either in their leader or in their congregations. That once this structure is put in place, you will be surprised at the people that will come forth who will say, hey, God is dealing with my heart to be a part of this. And we tell people how to start from as small as 5 people. 5 people. How to start with 5 people. This book would take you on a journey, a blueprint, starting with 5 people to what to put in place, who to put in place. We talk about what your board should look like. Every board member doesn't have to be a born again person. What you need, the diversity you need in the board in regards to people who are kingdom minded, people who are community driven, people who are influential. And then also even one of the chapters in here is how to write an impressive proposal, knowing the proper word choice, knowing how to make sure your narrative is strong, not to impress people, but to yet and still be in a way where those decision makers who have to release that money will understand what you're doing and will buy in and believe that what you're doing is to change that community. And so initiatives that are driven to touch communities, not just me, but I want to change everybody on this side of town. I want to improve this ward that we live in, or we want to have an impact on all senior citizens in this particular area. Things that touch community. I've discovered that the government will fund your initiative when it is to touch community. And this is not just for pastors either. If you have a desire of starting your own foundation, if you have a philanthropic passion, you want to be able to touch people and do big back to school giveaways and holiday turkey giveaways, or, be able to help people learn how to read, help people get reacclimated out of prison. Whatever your foundation or vision may be, start a Boys and Girls Club like initiative. This book will still also give you the principles that are lateral for both causes, as a church or as a community 501c3 foundation, organization, etc.
And it's amazing how you know that language, because you had a chance to work as a bank loan officer.
Oh yeah.
And that really helped you to be able to know what you need to say and how you need to say it in order for the bank or the government or whoever to give you money. You got to speak the right things. And it's good you've had that experience doing and giving out millions of dollars to churches over the years to help them with their mission, their vision. And I think
yes, sir.
There's a point in the book, really, and you said there was this person who had this vision of building a senior citizen complex. And you know what? Immediately I know who you're talking about. You didn't call no name.
No, I did.
But you saw this person.
Yes.
Work his tail off, number one, to make this happen. Get all the community excited. Get the city council to even approve some things. Approve it, really.
Yes. And
had some people to sabotage it. You take one person and sabotage the whole thing because they couldn't see. They couldn't see.
Oh man!
And we had the big picture, had it all. Well, I don't tell who it was now, but anyway. But talk about that. How did I
Man,
can hear the
that
passion in
that
your voice, how
I
it touched you.
yes, I never have been able to shake that moment. To witness your heart weeks after that, to feel the letdown, is something that now I understand God allowed me to carry that for now. I never knew why that bothered me so. While it, not just from a frustration, but from a weight, only to now be in a position where that now is a part of our 7-year plan, is to erect a senior citizen housing complex. But the story is Pastor Russell was pastoring then and had a great opportunity to buy up a housing complex that was right behind the church. I mean, some 100+ doors. I mean, massive, massive unit. You talking about families galore. And in order to do that, you can't do that as a church. You have to do that through methods that we're talking about now, through a nonprofit and things of that sort. And at the time, the vision was there. God had given it to him, had everything in place. And what he references as the inability to see is truthfully a refusal to allow vision to go forth. In that day and time, I still feel you were trailblazing. Many would say ahead of your time, to even be thinking that large. But to people who saw you as preacher, pastor, and not as visionary pastor, then they helped to bring that or to sabotage it to the degree where people say, well, I just don't think we should do it right now. And there are times I saw then where you have to move on opportunities. And it would have been a game-changing move for the state of Mississippi, not just for our area, for a predominantly Black church to secure a housing complex of that magnitude, to influence families, to bring about economic empowerment, to extend the earning capacity of minorities in the 90s, early 90s. I mean, God, mid-90s, that's unheard of. And it bothered me because I felt we missed an opportunity. And I talk about that in the book, that when we have only a church mindset, a Sunday morning service mindset, we miss opportunities to truly expand. And here's the key: change generations. I grew up and in cities where I've gone to college and travel places, you ride through most towns. Now it's a little better. But when it comes to churches that are pretty much led by African Americans, you're going to pretty much in summary see a sanctuary. You may see in some a family life center. When you look at our counterparts, our brothers in faith, there is a sanctuary, there's a teen center, there's a family life center, there's a daycare, there's also other components, bookstores and all this stuff. So we're thinking a church, they're thinking a campus. And in those other areas of their campus, those were programs that were in many occasions heavily influenced and funded by federal funds. And my desire and passion is for us to glean from the generation who trailblazed before us, such as yourself, so that we can position our ministries and churches so that those to come before us won't see a vast differentiation between the two, but we'll begin to see some harmony between the two because we serve the same God.
Great, great. Now let's talk about. And if anybody have a question or something you want to put it in the chat, and we'll certainly try to get to it. Shall we have the data there yet?
Deacon Emery asks, why do you think so many great preachers come from Mississippi? That is the question that we have right now.
I'll answer from my generation, but I think that's more of a Pastor Russell's answer. But I'll say this, first of all, look, from a sarcastic response is we cook collard greens different down here. And
Yeah.
so it's the meat that's in the greens that causes, but truthfully, some of the most talented gifts do come out of Mississippi. Coming up as a preacher in Mississippi, you know, you can't just, people will be kind to you just getting started, but you got to be great at what you do. If you're going to be a teacher, everybody's not a hooper. You got to be teaching. You know, you got to change people's understanding. You got to make that Bible talk. And there's a sense of responsibility we feel from those who travel before us. And then not only being able to preach, but either being a great administrator or being able to sing with it. So, you know, you want to follow in the same, you want to hold that standard that's been set. You don't want to be a part of the group that said, oh man, you know, we was expecting you supposed to be from Mississippi. So it's almost a sense of responsibility to whatever you do. We see more that are not just hooping preachers now, but whatever you do, if you're from Mississippi, you feel a sense of obligation to be great at what you do. So we're not lazy about being great at ministry and preaching.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that we had good examples going forward, good people to follow. I can call my daddy Reverend Lumley, Reverend Gardner, Reverend Blankenship. I mean, these preachers, they could all sure enough preach.
Yeah.
And then they didn't mind sharing with you what they knew. But you wasn't gonna get up there and preach and make a mess. In other words, you had to sit down and wait your time. And when you got your time, you had to really be on it and show that you had studied and proven yourself to be ready. If you didn't, you wouldn't get back up in the morning.
No.
So that's the thing. And the thing about it is they expected you to be ready at all times.
Yes. Yes.
And therefore you stay prepared every week, just like you were the pastor. Because my daddy would get up in the pulpit on Sunday morning and walk to the podium like he's gonna preach and turn around and say, okay, boys, come on, you're gonna preach today. And
wow.
You better be ready. If you wasn't ready, you wouldn't ever get back up there again. And he would get up there, everybody know that you made. In other words,
that's some pressure
to be the very best and all the time. You gotta stay in that word, you better stay prayed up. And as you go into worship every Sunday, you better be prepared to preach. And that's why I try to tell people right now, be prepared. I call it always have one in your back pocket. Always be ready. There ought to be something that you know you can preach.
That's what you told
I mean, you got that. I know I can preach this. If nobody else preach, I got this sermon I can preach. Mm-hmm. And that's where it ought to be. And like you said,
Pastor Russell, I can attest to what you're talking about because I was in one of your deacons in training class, and I recall, you probably don't even remember, but I recall you threatened us a few times. Always have a sermon in your back pocket, even you deacons, because you never know when I might be sick or I might have to call on you to go up and preach a sermon. So be ye always ready. Amen.
That's the way I grew up, and that's the way I continue to let people know going forward, the people who worked under me and I worked with over the years, and that's deacons, that's preachers, because it's all ministry, it's all leadership, and you must be ready at all. Because one thing, like I said this morning, like I might say Thursday night, my daddy, I was called to preach at 18, but daddy made me sit down for 5 years until I could say, like Labaron said, I had to say, I know I'm ready. Yeah, because Labaron, when you first came, you said, I think, but I said, go pray about it.
That's right.
When you came back, you told me, you said, I know this what God is calling me to do.
That's right.
When my daddy did me, I had to come back and say, I know, because there's nothing to play with. The gospel ministry, leading the church is nothing to play with. You cannot take it lightly. So I'm thankful that that you have gone forward, prepared yourself. You don't take it lightly, and you are in position now. Because I mean, it's highly unlikely for a lot of people that they will be able to do some things in life and then want to share with somebody in the book. In other words, this is how I did it. And not only willing to share it in a book, but you're willing to come and do workshops and seminars to help other pastors do it, because it's not a one-man thing. We all minister together.
That's right. That's
right.
You know, you can't.
You want to see somebody else succeed. You don't want to see somebody else down. You want to see somebody else be successful as well.
Yes, so, we really can't change communities effectively with just one ministry doing things. It takes all of us. And then, you know, the way to receive is through giving. A closed hand can't prosper. And whether that's money, whether that's ideas, whether that's experiences, you know, it is what we sow and share that positions us for harvest. And I live by that principle, you know.
Well, listen, you can have some words to wind us down. And we want to make sure we let everybody know, pray for the people of Louisiana and Mississippi as right now, Labaron, you all are preparing for a hurricane to come through that way anytime starting tonight and tomorrow. We just know we have prayer with the people of Mississippi and Louisiana. And but in your closing statement, if you could just kind of tell us something about, now you're bishop now. I know. So if you could say something about your ministry, because it's gone, people need to know you've gone further than just the United States. So what about your international impact and how it led also to you writing this book, and where do you want to go with this particular book?
Yes, thank you so much again for setting up for me to lead that way in this conclusion. I have been blessed to travel to other countries, and we've done crusades in Pretoria, South Africa. We've done crusades in Johannesburg, South Africa. We've ministered in Paris, France. And nothing impacted me more than like the Africa experience. And there, we were able to help some ministries and help pastors there. We were there for 14 days on two separate occasions. And it was just a blessing, Pastor. And that Acts 1:8, you know, being a witness, not just in Judea, but also Samaria and the other parts of the earth. That national, local, regional, national, international. We are to be witnesses for him. And that led my heart in such a way to put something in place that if ever in those positions again, which I foresee, I'll be able to put something in the hands of pastors. So much when you go out and you go to other countries and you talk to pastors, you feel their burdens, you see their pains. You try to do so much through conversation. And I was just so surprised at how many pastors in South Africa who were just sponges for knowledge. You know, they wanted material. And that was one of the first times the seed was dropped on me to start writing. And that kind of led to this. I also wanted to say that, you know, to people who may be inspired to lead in other ways. You may not be inspired to lead as a senior pastor, or one day you may feel you'll be a pastor, or if you're led to be an associate or be on a team with someone. You know, this book is necessary. This will position you to bring something to the table, to that vision and to that leader. So I do want to encourage you to invest in the book because I believe it will be necessary for now. Not to mention, coming out of this pandemic, that a part of the CARES Act infrastructure is to restore urban and rural communities. So there is a big pot of funds that's going to be available for CDCs to withdraw from as a part of our government's mission to restore communities in a rural sector as well as in a urban inner city sector. So this will position us to receive funds in the year 22 through the year 2024 that we've never seen before in the history of our country. So it's very timely.
Amen. Thank you so much. How can we get this book?
Yes, please go to my website, www.labaronhedgemon.com. It's right there on the bottom of that flyer. You can go ahead and order your book today. I will sign it and send it to you. If you want the digital book, you can get it as well, the ebook, or you can order it, and it will come directly to you today. So I appreciate your support. Any physical copies that's ordered, they will be signed with a personal message, and they will be mailed out hopefully as soon as this storm passes. This week sometime.
Thank you so much.
Pastor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man, for joining us and make me feel real proud of what you're doing. Continue the good work there, and keep us updated on the storm and anything we can do. Yes, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we are there to help as always. We're here for you. So again,
thank you so much.
Lord, we
Tell Mother
pray for
Teresa.
safety. Yes, we pray for safety. We pray that you would move in a mighty way, Lord, and keep our people, keep them from hurt, harm, and danger. And we give you praise. We know you're going to do it in Jesus' name. Amen.
In Jesus'
And I tell Mama
name,
Teresa,
amen.
what?
Tell Mama
She hear you.
Teresa I said, hey, that's my girl. Tell her I love her. That's my mother.
Yeah. All right.
Appreciate
All right.
y'all.
She hear you. All right.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Thank
God
you,
bless
Doc.
y'all. Next
Love
week
you.
we'll have the state president on and Pastor Vernon Patterson. So join us next week. We're going to talk about the vision for the state convention. God bless you, man. Good night. We'll see y'all.
All right. Okay.
Bless you.